All right, so welcome everyone. Glad that you've joined. It's going to be an exciting session today. I'm looking forward to it, so I hope you're ready to really have some fun, learn some new lessons about leadership from our esteemed panelists. And we have one more panelist that we're waiting to join. And so once she gets in, then we'll kick off. Now, in the meantime, if everybody can just let me know in the comment section that you can hear and see me accurately. I want to make sure that the audio and video is working well. If you can just say yes in the comment section, please. Okay. Okay, so since everybody can hear and see me, wonderful. And we have our third and final panelist online as well. Anu, hi, how are you?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So Anu is in the US. Yeah, Anu is in the US, so she's definitely waking up very early for this. Thank you for joining, Anu.
Of course.
All right, so we'll kick off. Now, first things first, I'll start us off with a little icebreaker, just to make sure everybody's feeling good, feeling great. So recently I was asked a question by someone on a call that really touched me and really stayed with me. The question was, on that day when we're having the discussion, the person said on the call, how is your internal weather? As in, how are you feeling? But a more sophisticated way of saying it. So I want to ask everyone the same question. How is your internal weather today? How are you really feeling? And let's use color coding for this. So if you're feeling really great, optimistic, everything is uplifted in your life and you just only see great things ahead, type green. If you're feeling average, I mean, things could be better, things could be worse, type yellow. And if you're feeling like, no, things are just down in the dirt, it's looking very bleak, type red in the comment section. Let's see how we're all feeling. So I'm seeing a lot of green. I'm seeing green coming in. I see yellow. I see green from Anu with an exclamation point. Mayokun says green too. That's good. Lizzie says yellow. Okay. Okay, I see some more yellows. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing a mix of greens and yellows. Thankfully, nobody is feeling red today so far, so that's good. My hope is that by the time we're done, all the yellows in the room, virtual room, will go from feeling yellow to green. Okay, so my next question I'd like to ask for everyone is just to have a sense and an idea of where everybody's calling in from today. So if you can just type in your location by city and country, so we know who we're with. And currently, I am calling in from Abuja, Nigeria. I see New Orleans in the house. Nice. San Francisco. I see Lagos. So we have a mix. I see Abuja, Lagos, Abuja. Okay, so we have a couple of Abujas in the house. Okay, so it's a good mix. So that's good. So now we can kick in to today's session. And I'm really excited. So you're going to see me smiling a lot. I'm really happy at the panelists we have on board, and I'm happy with the group of people that we have registered for this event. So let's kick right in. Now, the first thing I'd like to start off with is introductions, and just to help you get to know who you're talking to, who you're listening to as well throughout this session. So I'll start with myself. My name is Nwanyibuife A, Ugoweje, and I'm a project management specialist with over 10 years of experience managing projects across the health sector, education, and tech. Now, DYGL Africa, the company that's hosting this event, was founded by me in 2018. Now, DYGL is focused on providing networking and mentorship platforms, products, and services for African women to achieve their goals, both professional and personal goals. The idea is that you can't really achieve success, whatever that means for you in your life, unless you have the right networks and the right mentorship support. And so that is what we're here to do. That's why we exist, to enable you to achieve everything you want to achieve through mentorship and through networking, and specifically through kind mentorship and kind networking. We're very big on kindness and enabling environments for you to achieve your goals. Now, enough about me. Let's move into our panelists. Our first panelist is a serious, serious woman. Now, she is the Vice President of Commercial at Cars 45, which is Nigeria's largest digital automotive trading platform. She is well respected and highly sought after as a business leader because of her antecedents as a high-performing and results-oriented professional with proven performance across e-commerce operations, business advisory, data and analytics, and startups. Now, before she joined Cars 45, she was the Chief Operations Officer and the Vice President for Innovation and Strategy at Sankore Global Investments. And before that, at OLX, a global online classifieds company with footprints across emerging markets in over 40 countries, she worked as the Senior Manager for Business Development and the Acting Country Manager in Nigeria. It doesn't end. Now, she loves to speak about business operations and growth, strategic marketing, brand management, business intelligence, analytics and insights, customer management, product development, and how to scale ideas, products, and businesses. If any of these interest you, this is the woman for you to go to. Now, she's also passionate about shaping and harnessing the potentials of the next generation of business leaders in Nigeria, and she volunteers with the Young Professionals Bootcamp of the platform Nigeria. There's a lot to say about this woman, and this cannot wrap it up. There's so much more to her. This is just a few of the fantastic things she's doing. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Mayokun Fadeyibi. Mayokun, please go ahead and say a word.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
We can't see you right now, but we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, let's see. Yes.
I can see you now. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We're glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move now to our second panelist. Now, he is equally esteemed and accomplished, and I'm also very excited to introduce him to you. Now, he's an accomplished advocate in Nigeria with a track record of holding governments accountable to deliver on commitments to social programs, advocating for and tracking foreign aid and government spending at the grassroots level. He is the founder and chief executive of Connected Development, also known as CODE. Founded in 2012, CODE is the largest social accountability and transparency organization in Africa. Their Follow the Money movement trains young people and grassroots communities to monitor government and international aid spending on social goods and hold the government accountable. This is not a small feat, so already well done to him. Now, to date, they have built 50 community governance structures capacities to monitor the implementation of $10 million budgeted for in terms of social infrastructures across 191 communities. He has been recognized for his leadership in numerous ways, including being recognized by Apolitical, which named him one of 2018 and 2019's world's most influential people, 100 most influential people in digital government. He was also recognized among the 100 most influential Africans in 2019, joining the ranks of Amina J. Mohammed, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a personal favorite of mine, and Aliko Dangote. So without a doubt, he is extremely accomplished, and it's an honor to have him on board as well. So welcome, Hamzi, also known as Hamzat Lawal.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure being here to learn and share.
Thank you. Now, our last and final, and definitely not the least panelist in the group, is also a woman that I'm very, very excited to introduce to you, and I'll explain to you why in a little bit. Now, she's the co-founder and CEO of Ananya Health. At Ananya Health, she's responsible for the vision, fundraising, partnerships, and product pipeline. She has spent her career at the intersection of tech and public health, and she's obsessed with expanding access to care through affordability and appropriate design. Previously, she led programs at the eHealth Africa, also known as EHA, which is a large impact-first social enterprise, building stronger health systems through data-driven interventions. For over 3 years, she helped grow EHA from 200 staff in one country to a regional portfolio with 3 offices of over 750 staff and operations in 8 countries. I hope you heard, from 200 staff in one country to over 750 in 8, across 3 years only. Now, she also led the EHA's polio eradication program, working with the government of Nigeria and international partners to achieve 0 cases and bring Africa to a polio-free milestone, which we've achieved recently. Now, prior to EHA, she spent 5 years at CR Bard, developing medical devices across the continuum of care. She holds a BS in biomedical engineering from Georgia Tech, and it's an honor to welcome her as someone who I have also directly benefited from as a manager and leader. So welcome, Anu Parvartiyar. Anu, please say a word of hello to us.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to hear from the other panelists and to really hear from the community as well. So excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Anu, and thank you, everyone. So now let's move into the panel. Just a few quick housekeeping rules before we go in. Now, the first one, please, everyone, your questions. If you could kindly send them to the account that says Nikki DYGL Africa directly as a private chat. We want to make sure that all questions are streamlined through the same chat message box. So please send any questions you have for panelists directly to Nikki DYGL Africa and indicate which panelists you would like to answer the questions you're sending. Now also, please ensure to keep your lines on mute. Once the panelists are talking, to be nice for us to make sure we can hear them clearly and have no disruption from other sides. So please keep your lines on mute. So now we can go directly into the panel. Now today's panel is on leading against all odds. And we've structured it into 3 key areas that are of relevance to us, especially in a time like this. So that includes leading in a time of crisis, leading while afraid, and leading with compassion. So in terms of leading in a time of crisis, I don't think I have to tell anybody that we have been going through a serious global crisis for the past several months. I'm sure you've all been directly affected, from a health pandemic, all the way to discrimination and racial division, all the way to sexual violence cases surging up. There's just so much happening. I mean, job insecurity, the list is endless. So at this point in time, when we think about crisis, we think, when our leaders, what are they meant to be? How do they need to show up today in the world as we're going through crisis all over the place? What qualities should they embody? And we ourselves as leaders, what qualities should we embody moving forward? So my first question is going to Anu. And this question is, considering the current global crisis that we are dealing with right now, all the ones that I've listed, what are the essential leadership qualities that you think are required for these times? What do you think that it's a must-have for every single leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that I think changes week to week because we're in such an unprecedented time. None of us have really been here before. And I think globally, we're seeing huge disruption, huge shifts, and we're only just now starting to see huge opportunity come out of that. So I think maybe the first thing is an openness to, or maybe an empathy. I manage a very small team right now. We're a small startup company. Ananya is 4 people big. And we have conversations every week in our one-on-ones about, how just checking in emotionally. People are not at their normal productivity levels, whatever normal is, and we're not sure when everyone will go back. So I think being able to check in and say, where are you? How are you doing? And being able to be honest with yourself as a leader and say, how am I doing? There are days where you put on your happy face and you go out into the world, but you're not sure what's going to happen either. And I think just recognizing that is, everyone is there, that kind of empathy of, okay, it's not just me, I'm not just crazy, everybody is going through that. I think that is really, really important right now. And then always keeping a growth mindset. I think one thing that's become clear in the last 4 months, I'm here in the US, and the US pandemic response has been abysmal in one word. But when we look at what the landscape looks like after COVID, we're just now starting to see what work will look like. We're starting to see a lot of companies go fully remote or half remote. We're starting to see different products and services that are valued, and a different way of looking at the economy. So being sensitive to those shifts and that open-mindedness of, just because, we're not going to go back to normal, whatever normal was. The world will change, and being open-minded enough to see that, I think, are empathy and open-mindedness are my 2. So.
Thank you, Anu. I'm glad that you mentioned empathy and open-mindedness, and that you mentioned growth, having a growth mindset. That's something that I remember several conversations we have had directly about, the importance of making sure that you are constantly seeing, how do you grow, how do you develop, how do you become better as a leader? So thank you for mentioning that. I fully agree. Now, Mayokun, my next question goes to you, and it's piggyback off what Anu actually said regarding shifting from just being thrown into a crisis to actually seeing the opportunities in a crisis. So Mayokun, at this point in time, what are the ways that you think we can maximize opportunities that a crisis provides? Be it the ones that we're dealing with in terms of a health pandemic, in terms of restricted physical engagements, the economy, where do you think we can see opportunity, and how can we maximize it?
Thank you. So I think that So just taking a step back, right? Basically, essentially, based on what Anu had said, is also understanding that these are such unique times that it's okay to not have the answers right away, right? It's okay to not recognize the opportunities right away. And as leaders, we need to let our teams, people we work with, we need to help them be comfortable with that, right? And as a leader, we also need to not spread the panic of let's figure it out, let's figure it out. We don't understand what's going on. We'll take it one day at a time. We will survive, right? It's just putting that message out there to yourself, to your team of we are going to survive, right? And then once you have that stability, because the truth is if you don't have that stability, it's going to affect you, your team, it's going to affect everyone. We're working from home, you're working with kids around you. I mean, everything has changed. Even kids don't understand why they're at home all the time, all of a sudden, right? So we all have to go through that mind shift. And it's when you are comfortable with that mind shift of this is different, I think that's when you now start to recognize the opportunities. So it's then understanding that, and also not sort of, so I'm trying to do a balance, right? Because I know that also when the whole thing started, everybody was webinar here, you could do it, you could survive, take courses, do this, do that. I mean, it was like crazy. And I felt like people were just putting too much pressure on themselves. So for me, it's we will survive. And it's also not, let's not all fall into despair, right? Let's find that balance and don't be oblivious about the pandemic, but also don't panic. And then one of the beautiful things about being in a startup, which I think Anu can agree with, is startup mode is always pivot mode, right? You're not in bureaucratic mode. You're launching a product, you're researching a product, you launch it, and it's like you're learning as you go along and you're trying to find how else you can improve. So being in startup mode actually helps you with trying to recognize the opportunities because you're used to that anyway. And I think that's the one thing that has helped me, particularly on my team, is letting them understand that yes, things are different, but think of these weekly meetings as our regular weekly meetings and just saying, oh, looking at the performance from last week, the performance from 2 weeks ago, what do we need to do to change? I think that then helps people to understand the fact that we're still the same people, we're still the same team. Yes, things might have changed on the outside, but because we understand pivoting and identifying the gaps easily, then we can go into it. So I think for me, it's just not putting that pressure on yourself, understanding what's going on. I think even from classic examples here in Nigeria, all of a sudden, right, those who were into fabrics, tailoring, right? They were at home, but then they found a move into making masks, making PPEs, right? So it's whatever industry you're in, being able to find that alternative. For us, for example, at Cars 45, is knowing that people can't necessarily come to our centers anymore to do their inspections, at least initially. And we started doing things where you could give us some initial details about your car and we can provide evaluation. Very remote, tech enabled. So that way, at least we started to change or meet people's needs in the midst of the pandemic. So I think for me, it was just that, just very basic understanding we're in a pandemic. Don't rush, we'll figure it out and just try and identify those opportunities.
Thank you, Mayokun. So what I really like that you said is we don't have to act like we have all the answers. This is an unprecedented crisis that we're dealing with, at least for many of us. So the fact that we can say, okay, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but let me have the mindset that this crisis can provide opportunities. So once we have that mindset, we can now calmly look for those opportunities and then leverage on them. So yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned that. Thank you, that's very useful. Now moving into Hamzi. The next question, Hamzi, is specifically tailored for you because it has to do with female representation in leadership. Now, many times we're always having discussions about female leaders and not seeing enough women in leadership positions, be it senior management roles, be it executive roles. And we're always talking as women, this is what we need to do. This is how we should show ourselves up in the career space and in our work spaces. However, we don't hear enough of men and their own point of view in terms of what we can do right, as a collective, both men, women, and society, to see more qualified female leaders in leadership positions across all sectors, government, healthcare, agri, every other sector. So from your point of view, what do you think we can do, Hamzi? How can we actually get to see more qualified women in these leadership roles?
I think, well, again, thank you for having me. So I've been in rooms where we have this kind of conversation. And for me, sometimes I feel offended because one, women are natural leaders. Yeah, women are natural leaders, and I'm always proud to say that I'm made by a woman. Not just the fact that my mom gave birth to me, but I'm successful today because all the people who have who have supported me to get here, honestly, they are women. But how do we get women in position of leadership and in management? I think that we need to train men to become better people. Just generally to become kind and better people. And we need to also understand that this is deliberate. The fact that you don't see women in leadership and management. So let's even take a step back. When you watch television and there's a documentary about, a political leader or a business leader, or an accomplished philanthropist, you see the pictures of men. You hardly see that of women. We're dealing with toxic masculinity. Let's say it how it is. It is what it is. But it takes a lot for a man to be conscious, to know about these things. One, because there's always emphasis on how a woman should dress, how a woman should behave, how a woman should express herself, but there's little or nothing said about how a man should actually conduct himself. So for me at Code, and one thing that I've done to allow or give that room for equal opportunity, because for me it's about equity. It's about equity and seeing ourselves as equal, both as men and as women. In short, women are actually more equal than men. And my religion taught me that way. It's just that some people are shying away from it because they think that, if you allow women, then, they probably would not have a voice. But at Code, I was deliberate. So my COO, and it's a culture, I ensure and I make it, I made that as point of duty that my second in command must be a woman. Force women. So we have 35 staff currently, and we have 4,500 volunteers currently. So, but for full-time staff, I ensure that, because again, I'm involved with HR, but mostly senior management. But in management, we have even 80% management. On the board, currently it's 60-40, and we're working to ensure it's 50-50. But one challenge, and again, there's also a challenge. So I talked about having a volunteer base of 6,500 rather. We only have about 5% women. So the last time we were having a review meeting, and I asked our community engagement manager, Busaya, and I said, Busaya, why don't we have enough women running campaigns that follow the money? And it's like, Hamza, I'm not a magician. I can't get women to join the movement and run campaigns. I'm like, Busaya, if I answered like this, Code would have more men than women. So I gave him a target and I say, by the end of this year, I want to see more women in Follow the Money, but most importantly, more women taking leadership and running campaign at the grassroots. And he's telling me that his biggest challenge is, he can't force women to come forward. I'm like, no, you just have to tell stories and create an enabling environment and show that, we want women, but most importantly, we believe that women are the people that would drive this campaign and get their voices heard. And come to think of it, we service over 80% of women, the beneficiaries of our campaign. So we need more women to actually run this campaign. We can't have men running campaigns that women are beneficiary of. So, I'm dealing with that crisis, that challenge with Busayo and the community engagement department. But this is just our reality. There's so many things happening at the same time. But then again, I've had conversation with other CEOs, both male and female CEOs in various organizations. I'm like, so how do you try to even balance this? Honestly, the female CEOs are going through toxic relationship between their board and them. Because in the board, you have a lot of men. And, her idea as a CEO takes a lot of effort to fly. And the more, and when I watch my colleagues that are CEOs that are women, they put in more work hours than me, and they don't even get appreciated. so again, it's going to take a lot to unlearn, because we've lived with this culture for decades, and we're groomed into the society to believe that men is superior to women, which is wrong and false. So again, it's about unlearning, it's about deliberate, it's about being conscious, and then relearning, and understanding the fact that if we see ourselves as equal, probably we'll do away with all of the social crisis.
Thank you, Hamzi. And thank you for being honest and actually acknowledging that there is such a thing as toxic masculinity playing out in the workspaces. So thank you for that. I also love that you mentioned the intentionality behind what you do at Code. You intentionally choose to create an environment that more women can come into and more women can thrive in. And that's what I want to piggyback off on, just to say that that's what it seems we all need more of, that intentionality to bring in more women into the workspace that are qualified and give them opportunities to grow. So thank you. Hopefully men like you are listening, and men who are not like you are listening and taking notes too. Thank you. Now, my last question is going to go to each of you, and I'd love all of you to provide a response to this quickly. Now, considering the realities of the time right now, everything that we're dealing with, disruption due to COVID-19 in every industry, what do you think are the top three areas, right? 1 to 3 areas that we should focus on in the next 3 to 5 years? What skills also do you think that emerging leaders should be considering as they're trying to grow right now? Yeah, so we can start with you, Hamzi. You can go ahead and kick this one off.
Oh, wow, thank you. So as leaders, first, you must see every crisis as an opportunity, because when COVID came, of course, everyone panicked. No one understood what COVID was, but so maybe let me just drop into the 3 skills, and I'll talk if I have time. 1, data. You need to be able to inform your decisions with data. So today, if you are an emerging leader or you're a leader, what informs your decision if not data? And of course, make it open. 2, you need to have a lot of digital skill, because today, COVID-19 is telling us that we're investing so much on overhead when we can be in the comfort of our home and work and even increase delivery in the work that we do, and actually enhance delivery in the work that we do. And thirdly is to invest in people. So when COVID came, the first thing I did was to shut down Code a week before the government actually shut down Nigeria. And what I did was to I provided support for my colleagues. So they all got allowances, because I understood that they were going to be dealing with power crisis. I knew they were going to be dealing with paying for internet, because at the office, there's 24-hour power supply, there's free Wi-Fi. But working from home means they were going to pay more for internet and get alternative energy sources. And I also set up a channel for mental health support, because we need to also face it. We're experiencing a spike in mental health crisis, be it panic attack, be it, depression. So I set up a 24-hour channel, and, I reached out to everyone and say, see, you can talk to me any time of the day. And, we also got a consultant, on retainership to talk to colleagues around mental health. And COVID-19 made me realize that we actually invested so much in people. So today we're running a global campaign where we're tracking COVID-19 resources, working remotely in the comfort of our home, and creating impact, getting ministers and government MDAs to respond to us, not physically, but in the digital space. So if you are an emerging leader, people is your biggest asset. When you invest in people, naturally you're investing in loyalty, you're investing in, sometimes you might not be able to see that outcome of that investment, but COVID-19 has taught me that, investing in people and their capacity goes a long way. So yeah, as much as, ensuring you invest in digital tools, ensuring that you can work remotely and leveraging on data to inform policy and decision-making in your organization and shaping, how you engage, but people are our biggest asset. So human capital development is the way to go as an emerging leader.
Thank you, Hamzi. And I agree. Okay, so Anu, please go ahead, answer the same question.
Yeah, I love that, the investment in people piece, because it's number one, you start to see which companies have been doing that. all along. And then I think it's becoming more and more important for everybody. So I want to echo that piece of it as a general strategy. And then also to go back to something that Mayokun said that I absolutely loved. It's okay to not recognize, I wrote it down, so I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. It's okay to not recognize the opportunity right away. It's okay to not know the next 5 things that have to happen in your business so you will be successful. I was on a webinar in late March. It was like maybe the March 30th or March 31st, so 15 days after the US had shut down. And we were talking to a group of funders and social impact CEOs. And the advice that we got that I thought was so smart is your number 1 job as a company right now is to survive. You have to figure out a way for the company itself to survive. And you need to start thinking about that, not just in the, okay, what's gonna happen in the next 2 weeks, but like what is gonna help the long-term health of the business? Because you will not be able to employ anyone, you will not be able to make an impact, you will not be able to launch a product, you will not be able to change the world if your company does not survive. So I think for people who work in public health, and going to specifically in the question of what I do, I work in both medical device and public health. And in some ways, you would think that the pandemic is a good time to be in that business. But what I've seen is a lot of companies immediately flock to the first thing that they can think of. Oh, let's make ventilators, let's make respirators, let's make something that you need. Even if you are a company that makes MRI machines and CT scans, you have this temptation to jump in to what is immediately right in front of you. And I think that's, you know, I think that's not a great strategy if that's not what your core business is. We've seen now that particularly, I mean, we've seen tons of ventilators flood the market and they're not really being used. We haven't invested in the training, we haven't invested in the maintenance of these. So sometimes it's not the most immediate, obvious opportunity that you should be looking for, but really the more long-term, what is the health of the business? What will help you survive? In terms of opportunities in general in public health, I think telehealth is making a huge jump, and not just telehealth in name. I mean, we've talked about the promise of telehealth and remote consultation and things like that for maybe 15 years. And only now, when the rubber meets the road and people don't have a choice, are we starting to see what the real utility of it is. And we're starting to change the offerings based on that. The way that we look at what healthcare and remote healthcare looks like, our understanding of that is very different right now than it was, you know, let's call it 3 months ago. The second thing is, looking at public health, not just healthcare, but public health, I think there is going to be, and we're still starting to see, a real shift in the way people think about public health. Normally people don't think about public health. Normally when people are healthy, it's just not a thing that you have to worry about. And you can thank all of the public health people that work behind the scenes to make that possible. But the public is getting a real understanding of what it means to collectively invest in health, not just your individual, I go to the doctor and I, you know, prevent something or treat something, but really as a population. And related to something that Hamzi said, we're looking at data, not just for data's sake, of not just reporting out data, but data for action. And there is a big difference in how you look at those two things. What you can actually act on is often very different from what you just report on a dashboard that is sort of reactive. So I think I got through a bunch of different things. I'm sorry, it's early. I'm still working on my first cup of tea, but yeah, data for action, not just reporting, telehealth, and not just jumping on the first thing that you see as an opportunity.
Thank you, Anu. And no, you didn't jump too far. Everything you said was relevant and we needed to hear it and was right on point. So thank you. Mayokun, please go ahead. Same question to you as well.
Okay, thank you. So I think I will speak about it more from the perspective of the second part of your question, right? Around and I think the one thing that has been, so for example, I'm assuming that Hamzat is speaking from Abuja, right? And we're speaking from the US. But I am here in Lagos, and you can imagine what the concept of lockdown, work from home means for a city like Lagos, right? Where people are used to getting up out of their beds at 5 o'clock in the morning just to get to work by 8, right? And then they're working all the way until 6 p.m., they're in traffic, they're not getting home until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So the concept of remote work was really foreign for Lagosians in general. Like, it just could not be believed that it was possible. And fortunately or unfortunately, the pandemic has taught us that, yes, we can, right? People can work from home, people can still be productive. And I think as leaders, right, what we now have to start learning, because part of the culture as well in Nigeria, or I should say in Lagos, is also that you believe you need to see your co-workers, you believe you need to see your team members before you believe that they're working, or you need to be at your desk by 8 o'clock, right? We can be very, what's the right word now? We can be very, I can't find that right word, but where we're so, it's not about the spirit anymore, right? It's about the letter of the law. And I think what we're learning across board and across industries is that, one, people can work from home. You then as a leader need to manage them remotely, right? You need to build up your people's capacities to deliver on their deliverables, on their timelines, without anybody looking over their shoulders, right? And supporting them remotely to actually work. You don't have to see them. You're having one-on-ones on Zoom every week. So it's that process. So I think as leaders, we actually need to develop that ability to manage people very remotely, and also trusting your team, and them also trusting themselves, right? Because it takes a level of discipline to work from home, to work remotely, and you're still delivering. I think from a leader's perspective, I think those are very key, and helping to encourage your team that way. I think from an industry perspective, in the space we are in, automotives, right? We're in a situation now where we're finding that the virus isn't going anywhere, at least not anytime soon, right? From what we can see. And for economic reasons, at least that's my perspective, for economic reasons, the lockdown has been lifted, people have to move around, but people still have to be safe. So we're finding that the need for vehicles, right, is still very much out there, for people to buy vehicles, for people to sell their cars, right? That's still very much out there. And it's an opportunity because, again, people want to be safe, avoid public transportation as much as possible. And what we never thought, right, telehealth is now coming into automotives, right, where you're doing things like teleconsulting, helping them to value their cars remotely, speaking to them over the phone, doing video calls. So just being able to utilize these things that we never thought would apply in the automotive space, and trying to see how we can build on it are sort of next steps for us.
Okay, thank you, Mayokun. Now, what I love is that all of you mentioned two key things. One, the focus on data for action, building up our skill sets around data management, data collection, data analytics, actually. And then also investments in people, right? The capacity of people. So I love that. I think that's something that is definitely going to cut across all industries as far as skill sets are concerned. And they are worthy for every emerging leader coming on board. So I'm glad that that was mentioned. Now we're going to move into the second section of the panel, which is leading while afraid. And interestingly enough, when we sent out a pre-registration link to everyone for this webinar, we asked, which section are you most interested to learn about? Between leading in a crisis, leading while afraid, leading with compassion. Overwhelmingly, leading while afraid was the answer. Now, I wasn't surprised because I believe this is general. Like, fear is a human emotion that we all feel at different points in time. It's just not something that we all are willing to share and talk about due to fear, due to lack of enabling environments, due to shame even. So I'm definitely ready to hear what your thoughts are in terms of leading while afraid. And I'll kick off the first question to Hamzi. Now, Hamzi, I was really impressed by something you did recently. You shared an article online about your personal experience dealing with depression during this COVID-19 crisis period. Now, I was so touched and so impressed. I had to print the article and save it because to me, that was such a courageous thing you did. You were able to be transparent and share with people, this is a struggle that you're having, a human struggle as a leader. And sometimes we think leaders are meant to be fearless. They should never have any fears, never have any insecurities. They should just be tough and made of steel at all times. But the truth is, leaders are human beings. And your story really reminded us all that leaders are humans, leaders go through things, and leaders also can come out on the other end of issues and obstacles. That's what makes you a great leader. So my first question to you would be, how do you practice self-mastery in your own life so that you're able to effectively lead yourself and your teams and others while dealing with personal tragedies like the one that you mentioned in your article?
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your kind words and for reading the article. I think for me, so there are people that plays a significant role in your life. And these people are people you don't joke with. Some of them are part of family. Some of them are people that you meet and that you become friends and you trust and then become part of your family. So for me, I'm very conscious, and I always go back to these people and collect feedback, because those are the people who give me feedback and would not lie to me. And so for me, I would always reach out. I always reach out to them, and they're always in tune on what I do. So naturally, everything I do mostly are on Twitter, Facebook. So they follow me and they watch everything I do from afar, behind the scene, and then they give me feedback. So for me, it's collecting this feedback from these people and taking those feedback seriously, and also implementing some of, not all, because I won't lie, some people want you to do things a certain way, but even as much as they love you, they just feel, okay, you know what? Okay, thank you, but I'll still do it my own way. I'm not a dictator, but yeah. So yeah, for me, it's, collecting this data from these people, this feedback, and try to use some of them to better the, my work and my life. And maybe lastly, and maybe this might sound weird, but forgive me, spirituality plays a very important role. Because sometimes we talk about all these things, some of us and most of us who are successful, we just speak and then we say, oh, we did this, we did this, we did this. But honestly, we didn't do anything. God actually did everything, because if you ask me some things that happened, I honestly cannot explain them to you. But I know that, spirituality plays a bigger role. I'm a Muslim, and, I believe, and my belief, as much as I'm a Muslim, I have a lot of Christian friends, and we all agree that there's a higher being out there, a mighty being overseeing all of us. So in all of this also, there's that part of spirituality, and connecting to that part, just maybe, doing yoga and just connecting to something big, and then ideas come, or you just see vision. I'm not in double skill, but I'm just saying, spirituality plays a big role, and just meet, just having a quiet moment and praying about things. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamzi. I'm glad that you touched on spirituality. The fact that it's important that we have faith and believe in God, and believe that we are not the ones that can do it all on our own, that it's the grace of God and the belief that we have. So thank you so much for mentioning that. I love that you mentioned yoga as an example, because one of our other panelists, Anu, is actually a yoga instructor. She teaches yoga. So once you said that, I thought of Anu, and I'm sure she definitely agreed with you when you mentioned it. Okay, thank you. Now, the next question goes to Mayokun. Now, Mayokun, this is about confidence and courage. And I'm directly asking you this question because in finding out more about you, I realized that you're not an accidental leader. You actually have a very clear background and set of experiences that helped you get to where you are today. And influencers, key influencers in your background growing up that helped you get to where you are. So if you could just tell us a bit about what experiences that have helped shape you as a strong leader who is confident and courageous, and some of the influencers that have been there for you to get you to where you are today.
Okay, well, thank you. I think for me, like you said, when I think back about it, it's very important for your environment, right? And what you see, it invariably molds you and impacts you into who you are. And I think for me, I was very fortunate to be born into a family of 6 girls. And for anyone who knows sort of some gender bias, particularly in Nigeria and Africa, people tend to look down on the girl child. And you hear them telling your parents or your dad and saying, you don't have any children. I mean, when are you going to have a child? And you're thinking, hello, there's 6 of us here. What do you mean by he doesn't have any children? right? And I think because of that, and because my dad knew that we were also aware of this, of his family members, extended people saying this, he went out of his way to really reinforce, a belief in us, and literally saying, listen, you are my child. You can do whatever you set out to do. You can be the best in class. I mean, even from growing up, right? It used to drive my mom nuts, but my father would always say, listen, she has human rights, right? She's done something wrong, but let her speak and explain why she did what she had to say. Why she did what she did, even before you spank her, before you let her speak, right? So he always gave us that voice of speak your truth. And so I grew up knowing that wherever I went to, I could speak up, right? Because he gave me that background. And interestingly, based on what Hamzat was saying, what I've also found is that the leaders I've had, the mentors I've had, right, have been women leaders who have believed in me, given me opportunity, and pushed me forward even when I did not want to. I had a boss in the US who the management will send us an email asking questions about something, and she'll just look over from her desk and say, I'm not replying, you reply. And I'll be like, I'm just an analyst. Why am I the one replying? She's like, because you need to learn how to reply those type of emails, right? And so she forced me to, even if what you're writing is, you think is, do it, right? And that's how you sort of learn to start taking on opportunities. And even when I think about, so my dad, and I think because he's a professor, right, in the university, so that being in academia also helped to mold him that way. And I also have, my mom is also in academia, but my mom also was in industry. And I remember when she was pregnant with her last child, right? And she was 40, pregnant, and she was a director in a pharmaceutical company. And she would leave very early in the morning. I saw her, and it was normal to me, right? For you to be pregnant and still work very hard. And without knowing it, I think it molded me such that by the time, for example, not recently anymore, but about a year ago, yes, last year I had a baby, right? And everyone at work kept looking at me as, why are you still working so hard? You're pregnant. But it just did not occur to me to act differently because I was pregnant, because I had seen my mom do it, right? So what I've recognized or realized after the fact is what you see around you sort of molds your mindset and molds how you react in the future. And so with my career, I have learned to take on opportunities that I might have instinctively thought, nope, that's not for me. Nope, I can't do that, right? But because over time, I have seen people who have gone ahead of me, quote unquote, do it, right? I just sort of learned to build up that courage, so to say, and take it on. Of course, it doesn't mean that's my instinctive, response right away, but it just means at least I've learned that it's possible, right? And I can give myself that chance.
Thank you, Mayokun. I'm so glad that you mentioned the importance of your father's role in helping you get to where you are as a leader. I love that. I have a father who is similar in that regard, in championing women. And he's a very serious girl dad. So I love to hear that your father is a girl dad. I love that.
Absolutely.
And congrats to you on having your child last year. I mean,
Thank you. I keep forgetting that I had him last year because I see him running around now.
Well done. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Now, the next question is going to go to Anu. And Anu, this question has to do with stress. And I know you understand this because I mentioned earlier when reading out your bio that you went from taking a team of 200 staff members at eHealth Africa to over 750 across 8 countries in 3 years. And that in itself sounds stressful. So can you please tell us right now any advice that you have in terms of how to deal with stress, right? And how we can de-stress in our own lives? What are the best stress management techniques that you practice? that you'd love for us to know?
Hamzi stole my thunder here because you knew I was going to talk about yoga. No, I think as you go through your career, one of the most important things you can do is understand how you personally respond to stress, and start to see those triggers before it becomes unmanageable, or that you hit a situation where you can't cope or get out of it. For me personally, I think physical movement is really, really important. Paying attention, stress is one response in your body. Fear is one response, something that you and I talked about on the phone recently. But often getting out of feeling those emotions and feeling something else, like going for a run or doing some yoga or playing basketball, it takes you out of feeling, oh, I'm stressed, like, oh, I'm running, often that physical movement translates to, obviously there are health benefits, you get endorphins and all of this, so it does help you de-stress, but I think it also takes you out of that mental moment as well. So that is, mindful movement is really important to me. I love yoga. I think it's great. I don't know that everybody does or has to do it, but it is one thing that really forces you to be intentional about what's happening in your body. And that often helps me de-stress. I love meditation. Similarly, we talk about spirituality, and however you meditate, however you choose to manifest that, whether it's prayer or something else, to me, it often is a really grounding, centering moment. And then the last thing, and something that's become really obvious to me recently, is we have to talk about it. We can't just pretend that it's not happening. And it's not like every person you meet on the street, you have to say, oh, I'm so stressed. It would make you quite a bore in conversation. But for me, I have a few friends here in San Francisco in my close circle that are also founders or CEOs of companies. And they often normalize the emotions. They've been through this before. And so I have a good friend who will tell me, oh, you're raising around a fundraising, or you're raising around for your company. This is what I felt. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be stressed about this. Take a deep breath. You're not alone. And the other person that I often call is my mom. And my mom and I have been close for a long time, but our relationship has definitely evolved as I have gotten better at articulating my emotions. As I am able to say, she called me yesterday, I was moving apartments, and on a conference call, and she calls me and I'm like, okay, Mom, I'm sorry, I'm stressed. Like, I don't mean to be mean, but I'm stressed. And she's like, okay, that you can say that out loud. Great. I can help you. But when you're just like, what do you want? Then it becomes much harder. So the better you are at identifying what's happening with you, the better you can ask for help. One tip that I heard recently is when you hire team members, or when you hire, especially people at an executive or director level, is to understand how everybody else responds to stress as well. So when you can tell your team members, okay, when I'm stressed, this is what I act like. I often shut down. I often communicate less, as Adesi probably knows, because in my mind, I've got so many different tasks. And if your team members don't know that, they can think, is she mad at me? Like, what did I do? But the better you are able to communicate that up front, I think particularly in times like this, it helps your productivity and it helps you cope with that. People are often willing to help you. They just don't know what they need to do. So.
Thank you, Anu. I'm glad that you really touched on being able to effectively communicate what's happening to you when you're stressed. I think that's something that is easy not to think to do, and it can leave people very confused when dealing with you. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And yes, we've definitely had discussions about fear and stress, and yep, you've been very helpful there too. Now we'll move into the third part of the webinar. Now this is focused on leading with compassion. And I'm really interested in your thoughts on this as well, because again, there's this myth, right? The strong leader myth that says strong leaders are just tough. They are dictator type leaders. They just really have no room for emotion or kindness or empathy. So this is really going to be a section for us to talk about the importance of compassion and what it means to be a compassionate leader. Now, to explain briefly, compassionate leaders take proactive approaches to their role. They are clear with their expectations, with their company and organizational needs, and they take action with an active concern for their team members. So that is what it means when you think compassionate leaders. You think clear, concerned, and they're focused on their goals as well as the well-being of their team members. Now, Hamzi, the first question is going to go to you. Why do you believe that we should actually become more compassionate leaders? Why is that anything worth our time or investment?
Okay, just to answer in one word, because to make people feel good. But that being said, maybe I would share personal experience or an example. So most of our funding at Connected Development ended in December 2019. So what this means is, and if you do fundraising, it means there are conversation and counter conversation with various donors, both existing donor and new donors. And some of this conversation, there's a lot of uncertainty. And then in February, we were hit with COVID-19. So what happened was I was using some of our savings to still keep colleagues afloat. And of course, I'm always transparent, and I tell colleagues, this grant have ended, but we're hoping that we're going to get renewal, and then there's COVID-19. So a lot of my colleagues were on the edge because they don't know what's going to happen. So for me, being compassionate also is about communicating effectively. So I made a very conscious decision and announced it to my colleagues and say, you know what, I'm not going to let anyone go this season. I told them, no one is going to get fired. There's COVID-19, there is, unemployment rate. I am not going to be someone who would contribute to unemployment. Rather, I want to, contribute towards taking people from the, the employment market. So I told everyone, so just calm down, calm down, guys. I'm not going to fire anyone. So let's just get work going. But when COVID-19 hit, the first 3 weeks, and honestly speaking, the first 3 weeks, productivity was down, was low to like 15%. First of its kind, so my colleagues were struggling. Yes, I gave them all the support, but they were struggling for working from home. The only element that was missing was the fact that the human connection. So we're so used to ourselves in the office that we just felt we're family, and people look forward to going to the office because the workspace is really nice. For those of you who have been to our workspace, it's really funky. When you're inside, you don't want to leave. So that element is something we couldn't bring in the, in the virtual workspace. So productivity came down to 15%. And for that 3 weeks, honestly, it was frustrating for me. I felt like, there was this mountain on top of my shoulder. I felt really stressed, but I didn't take my stress on anybody. I just breathed and just lived through the 3 weeks. And afterwards, and they just realized, oh, we have done so badly, and yet Hamzi did not complain. If you know me very well, man, I complain a lot, so like we'll get done. But so they now became more conscious, and a lot of them later reached out personally and they were apologizing. I'm like, no, you don't have to apologize. So for me, that's being compassionate. Giving people a breather and just allowing them know that it's okay. It's okay sometimes to not be productive, because it's not their fault, and just understanding the fact that our current reality, is affecting everyone. The fact that some of us can just be fine because we've dealt with depression and we came out of it does not mean everyone would do the same. Some people actually could be depressed for over 2 years and struggle to get out of it. So for us, and for me, it's, just being deliberate about it and give a lot of my colleagues a breather and, just allow them flow. Yeah, by the way, I'm now signing up new grants. So, there's ease of tension and some money coming in now. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamzi. Congrats on the new grant.
Thank you.
That's wonderful news. And I'm happy that you mentioned the deliberate action you take to give your team a breather, like you said, to give them room to understand that, hey, we're going through a change right now. We're going from physical in-person meetings to virtual meetings. It's not easy. And so giving room for them to adjust and pivot into that and still, like you said, drop in productivity, but then hopefully pick it back up again, that's really compassionate of you and kind. So I'm happy that you mentioned that. Now, the next question is going to go to Anu. Now, Anu, this is regarding compassion again as a leader. Now, earlier I mentioned that strong leaders, right? The myth of the strong leader. They're tough. They don't have compassion. They don't show kindness. Kindness could possibly even be seen as weakness. However, I've seen that as a compassionate leader, you have succeeded. And I can directly attest to that. I've been under your leadership. I've seen that firsthand. Now, how do you intentionally apply empathy and emotional intelligence in your success as a leader? Because it was clear that everything you did was very intentional and very deliberate. So please share that with us.
Thank you. That is, I think there's no greater compliment than hearing that from somebody that you have supervised. So I really appreciate that. And I think that is, that's probably the crux of the answer, is when I look at what success is for me, when you are a leader, or when you lead a team, when you lead a company, when you lead a group, whatever it is, your job first and foremost is to help everyone else succeed at what they're doing. Your success is directly tied to the success of the people around you. And being a compassionate leader doesn't mean that you can't ask for results. It does not mean that you cannot be firm, but people want to be treated like people, and respect is earned. You cannot force your way to respect. You earn it, and you treat people in the way that you would want to be treated, and you build that over time. Of course, there will be people along the way that take advantage of that, but I think we have to having empathy also means understanding that, okay, I'm being taken advantage of, and dealing with that situation. At the end of the day, I'm not here to teach people a lesson to say, I'm going to show you how strong I am. If it's not a good fit and you're not strong enough to be on the team, then it's a disservice to everyone else that is. And we find ways to transition them out. But I think people get this false dichotomy in their heads of like, I need to appear strong. But that force is generally, it's because there's a lack of understanding of how people actually, how you yourself would want to be treated. But like I said, there's nothing more gratifying to me than getting a phone call or an email or a note from somebody that I have worked with, either in a supervisory role or just worked with as a colleague, and to maintain those relationships. The things that will matter in our lives are not the titles we had. It's these enduring relationships that 3 years later, we can still have a great hour-long catch-up. And at some point, my very first boss, when I was graduating college, I was interning at a medical device company in Atlanta. And when I left that company, it was in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis, and he had helped me find a new role. And when I left, he said, one day, I hope I will be working for you. And I hope that I have treated you well enough that if I called you looking for a job, you would hire me. And I found that to be the most incredibly gracious thing. This man was 20 years my senior, was the CEO of a small medical device company at the time, and really somebody that I respected. And to hear that and to hear his perspective, it really, it shone a light on the kind of person I wanted to be. The people that you look up to are the people that you should emulate. And I thought that was just the classiest thing that he could ever say. And I will say right now, if he called me tomorrow and said, hey, I love what you're doing and I need a job, I would hire him in a heartbeat. So.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I love that that's what your boss told you, because things like that, right, coming from your boss also helps pay it forward for you. So that's the type of energy that you use and you apply when you're moving in with your own teams. So I'm happy that you mentioned that. Thank you. And it's a joy to me that even now, years later, we can still talk and have conversations, and you can still be on a panel supporting the things that I'm doing. So thank you so much. Thank you. Now, Mayokun, the next question is for you. Now, this is about something that Anu also mentioned, which is you can be compassionate as a leader and still be firm, right? You can still take corrective action when needed and make firm decisions for the benefit of your team as a whole. Now, how do you personally show compassion as a leader without being perceived as being a pushover or weak? Something that I hear this question a lot in different discussions I'm in. How can you actually be compassionate and not be seen as weak and not have people take advantage of you on a daily basis?
Thank you. So I actually loved when she said that, right? Because I just started smiling because what I found is, people sort of also assume that because you're being compassionate, then they can take advantage, right? But I found out that if you don't act on that, it affects everybody else on the team because they can see how you're not stepping up to deal with that, right? And invariably, it then affects them and the productivity and everything. So I think for me, what I have learned is that willingness to be approachable, right? People need to be aware that, they can come speak to you, but they also know that you're being very firm right? And you're not going to be abusive. You're demanding for results, but you're not going to be abusive about it. So if I give an example, someone recently said to me that, listen, I know that if I don't do what I'm required to do, you scold me, but you will still talk to me as a human being, right? And I didn't realize how just important that was for that person. And the person gave me examples from other bosses that say, oh, this is what this person, but you would still talk to us as a human being. And I think for me, it's very important to me how people speak to me. I don't like people talking down at me. I don't, and because of that, I have made a conscious effort, a conscious decision that however I relate to anybody else, I need to make sure I'm speaking to them like I would want to be spoken to, right? And it has just taken me that conscious decision to make sure I'm relating to people that way. And so as I look at some of my team members, I had a team member who, when he joined, was really struggling. He sort of he was changing industries. He had come from a different industry into ours. And, for him, he just couldn't make that leap, right? And I had to spend some time with him just initially, having meetings, one-on-ones every week just to help him. But even then, as I'm telling him what's wrong, what's going on, we're still having our weekly performance reviews. They're separate, right? So I'm in your corner, I'm supporting you, but when it comes to the numbers, we're still going to look at it and say, why are your numbers this way? And you need to come to me with an understanding of why the numbers are not meeting up. But you also know that I'm giving you a chance to explain and I'm not berating you. And I think he and I went through that process. And he reminded me today that he's been 1 year in the company. And I totally forgot about it. But for him, it was a huge milestone. And it was an opportunity for him to say, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance and not saying, oh, my first 3 months, I was terrible. I need to leave, right? Now he's one of my most valuable team members. So I think it's just taking that time to work with people and they know that you are still going to be firm about the numbers, but you're going to take that extra time to work with them. And I think something else I wanted to mention very quickly is that as leaders, I find myself guilty of this, is that you spend so much time reaching out to your team members about work that sometimes we forget to reach out to them just about how are you, right? How are you doing? And the one time I think I picked up the phone and I just called somebody and said, oh, hi, how are you? And I said, oh, I just called to say hi. And she was like, really? There's nothing else? I'm like, no, I just called to say hi, right? And that made such a huge difference. And I think just seeing people see them beyond their work, beyond their titles, beyond their deliverables that they owe you, I think it really helps a great deal.
Thank you, Mayokun. That's so important. Seeing people beyond their titles. So important. I'm happy that you mentioned that. I also love that you said you can scold your team member and still scold them as a human being. You're talking to them like they're humans, right? So yes, the bottom line is important. Yes, the results we're seeking are important. And you can still push that message along as a human-to-human interaction. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And I think it's so important because this is one that people tend to have a lot of issues with, how to actually be compassionate and not be seen as weak. So that's really the answer. Take the action you need to take, however, take it in a human way. And remember that you're dealing with human beings. Now, the next two questions are our wrap-up questions for the panel. And these ones are going to go to everyone. Now, the first question is regarding imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome refers to an internal experience of believing you're simply not good enough or you don't deserve the role that you're in. And this is something that is also quite prevalent in the workspace, but people don't talk about it enough, right? We hear fake it till you make it, just show up and have that executive presence, whether you believe you can do it or not. Now, how do you deal with imposter syndrome or feelings of not feeling adequate, right? Of inadequacy in your own work? If you ever feel that, how do you deal with it? And I'll start with Mayokun and go right ahead and let us know.
Okay, thank you. So I think for me, dealing with imposter syndrome, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I know I have it. I experience it. And I have just learned to sort of remind myself, affirm myself constantly that, I worked hard to be here. I deserve to be here. I deserve to be in the room. And I think your tribe is also very important. who are the people that sort of surround you? Who are your go-to people? I think Anu mentioned it with her colleagues, you know, CEOs, founders. Those are people that sort of remind you, because sometimes we forget. We put on so much about how we're not doing this well enough, we're struggling here, and we sometimes forget that, you know, we kick butt, right? Yeah, sorry, that's a lot. But we sometimes forget that we've done great things, and it's always important that you have people who can affirm you, who can remind you, because sometimes we go through these times of, and so I have learned to always go back to that tribe, right? My husband is very big for me here, where he constantly reminds me of that, to say, listen, you can do this, you're doing this, go out and do this. And he pushes me. In fact, things that I would think, no, I can't do that. Is that, why not? You can and you will, right? And when you have people like that who support you, it helps you, because you know that you're also doing something that you can't afford to let them down, right? These people believe in you, you can't afford to let them down. And then for me also, as a woman leader in my organization, I also look at myself as, I'm an example to young ladies in the business, right? I want them to have people that they can look up to and know that it is possible. Because like I said very early on, what you have around you, what you see around you, invariably molds your mind and lets you know what's possible. So invariably for me, by just telling myself again that, listen, I can do this, I qualify to be here, what I'm saying makes sense, I'm actually speaking not just to myself, but to the young people around me, who I also want to, in future, have jobs that they can employ me, right? Like Anu said, right? So it's very important to me that I'm doing it not just for myself, but also for people around me.
Thank you, Mayokun. I'm really glad that you said that. I'm glad that you also said, celebrate your wins, right? Like you said, we do really amazing things as leaders and as managers. So celebrate what you do. I'm really happy that you mentioned that. And that you also mentioned you have a very supportive husband. I can also relate in this. So that's wonderful. Now, Anu, the same question will go to you too.
I don't know a single person who has achieved something great that does not deal with imposter syndrome. I don't know everybody that has achieved something great, but everyone in my reference group, I just talking about normalizing this. Adesi, you and I talked about this on the phone less than a week ago now, and I'll be honest with you. I'm running an early stage startup company. We have funding for, I can tell you what's going to happen 3 months from now, and that's about it. So we are constantly evolving the product. We're constantly evolving our strategy. There's not a week that goes by that I think to myself, what am I doing? This is terrifying. But the counter to that for me is fear is just one emotion. I'm also very passionate about what I do. I love my job. I think I have the job that I was made to do, at least at this point in my life. And the thing that I have to remind myself is that fear will always exist. Whether or not I deserve to be in the room, I think that fear will always exist, but so will the passion and the excitement and the possibilities and new opportunities. And you have to treat those things as equal. Like fear is just one thing that you feel. Don't let it take more importance than anything else. I loved Mayokun's point about the young women in the room. My cousin is on. I'm just going to give her a little shout out. Richa Prasad is on. Hi, Richa. Hopefully you can turn your video on.
Richa. Glad that.
Yeah, I see. Hi. Hi. And this is just such a great example. She saw this shared and wanted to join. And I think to myself, sometimes it's really easy to minimize where you are and what you do and say, like, I haven't really done anything and I'm not really, I don't really have anything to say here. And then I remember who's listening. And it really does change the way that I think about my work when I realize it's not just about me and how I feel, right? Like there is nothing more gratifying than having people that you respect tell you that they respect you. Adesi is a great example. To be invited to join something like this and to hear that, oh, okay, I think you have something to say. Even when I have doubt, you need to look for those other pieces of validation or realize that it's not just about how you feel, that there are other people that are benefiting from your work, from your presence, from your voice. and continuing to speak up. I mean, the fear will always be there, but don't let that be the only thing you feel.
The fear will always be there. Don't let that be the only thing you feel. That is a quotable. Thank you. And I agree. Okay, so the next question and final one for everyone as well is regarding leadership resources, right? So we're always learning, we're always developing, we're always becoming better in our leadership style and our approach. Now, for each of you, if you could please give us 2 leadership resources that you recommend for those who are listening in right now. Now, that can be a book, a video, a podcast, an article, a training. If you can just give us 2 of the top that you would say, you know what, as a listener, go and check this out. It will change your life and change your leadership approach. And so I'll start with Anu, since you were the last one for the other question.
A book that I often give to my teams is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not, there are tons of leadership books out there. People have their favorites. The thing that I really like about Stephen Covey's book is the first section is all about personal mastery. It's all about dealing with how you personally show up to the world. And the second half is about how you interact with teams. I think it's just a great, really foundational book. And then there is a great podcast or TED Talk by Brené Brown on vulnerability that I think every leader in the world should watch, should read, going back to the strong leader idea and the iron fist versus compassion. I think her thoughts on vulnerability are really, really helpful.
Thank you. Now, the first book you mentioned, you gave it to me too. You gifted it to me as well. So that was a big blessing. And the second video on vulnerability by Brené Brown, also fantastic. Watched it as well. Thank you for those. Hamzi, if you could give us your 2 recommended resources, please. We'd love to know.
Well, this is really difficult. I'm struggling to streamline it into 2, but one is this book written by Aisha Osori. I really enjoyed reading the book. It took me 2 days to read. Love Does Not Win Election. It takes you through the journey of how women struggle in the political space, and it will bring you into consciousness as a man or even as a woman who's thinking about leadership or political leadership, or takes you to the reality of, the political system in Africa. And then secondly is, so I'm a huge fan of Amina Mohammed. You can say I'm obsessed with her. So for me also, it's just watching her first from afar and then getting close to her and then becoming one of her mentees. So, so that has really helped and shaped my life. So, Amina Mohammed it's one person that her journey, her story would inspire you, as a woman and even as a man.
Thank you, Hamzi. Those are fantastic recommendations. And I'm glad that you mentioned Amina Mohammed. I'm a big fan of hers too. Now, Mayokun, if you can wrap up for us with your 2 resource recommendations.
Well, I think for me, at least the book I just finished reading recently was The Ride of a Lifetime, Bob Iger. And that's the Disney CEO. And he talked about his time from ABC, right? And just how he grew to be a leader and, even things like compassionate leadership, dealing with difficult decisions, dealing with times of crisis. I mean, there are so many parts of the books that I kept wanting to underline and go back to. And I think that's such a very practical example of someone who has grown through the ranks, right? And just seeing how he was able to do it for me, that book was very practical. And there were many parts of the book where I would go back and say, yes, I understand this. Yes, I can see myself here, right? And so I think that's something I would recommend to everyone. Another book that I just finished reading recently as well was Shoe Dog, right? The Nike story, Phil Knight. I mean, that book was just crazy, right? It talks about the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and literally building a company from scratch. The fact that you don't always have to have all the plans. I mean, even the name Nike, right? How it came to be. So I think for me, it just made it real, that journey of entrepreneurship, startup, and just being willing to trust the journey, right? And so those are 2 books that I would recommend.
Thank you. It seems all your recommendations, one, are already fantastic ones, and I have a connection to at least one of each person's recommendation. I had recently watched a masterclass by Bob Iger, and I really thought he also was a fantastic example of a compassionate leader who is also very intentional in his leadership style. So once you mentioned his book, I just remembered, oh, I need to go and get that book. So thank you for mentioning it. Fantastic recommendations. Okay, so we have wrapped up with the panel session. We're now going to move into the Q&A. The audience has some fantastic questions they've sent in. Now, before we move into that though, let's do a quick energizer because we've had a long session. So I want to make sure everybody is still alert, which I'm sure is the case. You've been very engaging panelists. So everyone, if you can just quickly type in the comment section, if you've heard something that new that you love, you want to apply in your life that's useful to you, just say yes. Just type yes in the comment section. Let's know how engaged and active you are with us right now. Oh, I'm seeing the yeses. I'm seeing, okay. Yeses are coming in, good, very nice. And I love the yes with the exclamation point, even better. Really good, really, really good. Fantastic. I see a couple more yeses coming in. Okay, I see Uloma, yes with 2 exclamation points. I like the extra effort. Okay, really good, really good. Now, I'll ask everybody just one more energizer activity for you to do. If you can just type in the comment section, what's one word, like the one word that describes this panel session for you so far, that's resonating with you. Is it intentionality? Is it compassion? Is it courage? What is the one word that's really sticking with you right now from everything you've heard from our panelists so far? One word, it can be any word. Okay. Compassionate, vulnerability, courage, courage again. Let's see, courage, empathy, really good, really good. Any other words, any final ones? Okay. Humility, humility, truthfulness. This is really good, empathy. Good, okay, so these words are right on point. Very good to know. So now let's kick into some questions. Now the first question is for Anu. So this question says, as with everything in life, it is important to know when to pass on the torch. The greatest leaders build up other leaders. How do you help build up other leaders? And what tips do you recommend for the rest of us to do the same?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm gonna tell a personal story here. I never thought I would end up living in Nigeria. And I went for 2 months and then ended up staying 3.5 years, and I still miss it to this day. It's making me so happy to hear stories from Lagos, even now, and Abuja. But I think up until that point, eHealth Africa was just some of the best work I'd ever done. I loved the team. I loved the work. I loved how we were doing something new and groundbreaking, but also you could see the impact of it. And it was a very, very hard decision to leave. We had grown tremendously and then shrunk a little bit and grown again. The organization had really seen a lot of change in 3 years. And I didn't know when it would be time to go. It was something that I didn't really expect to be there. And then I ended up staying and staying and staying. And when, as many of you know, I'm American, and we were here in the US when after the 2016 election, I sort of had a reckoning moment of, okay, I've now seen a lot of things happen here. And I've done a lot of work in Africa, and I'm happy to be here, and I love the work that we do. But number one, I'm not close to my family, and the climate is changing, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the future here and now. And number two, I'm really a person who loves the early stage and high growth phase of organizations. I love that 200 to 800 people in 6 months. It's a crazy scale up, but you're putting in systems, you're not exactly sure where you're going to go. And I think that's the environment that I really thrive in. And after 2.5 years, we were coming to a place where things were stabilizing. And I wasn't sure if it was time. I don't know, like I'm seeing these things happen, but there was a lot of doubt in my mind of, if I leave now, will my team feel like I'm abandoning them? That was something, there was a lot of guilt there. And we ended up hosting a conference, the first ever conference that eHealth Africa had over all of the country offices. So we had 4 offices participate, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and a couple of other people from Guinea and Chad, and remotely. And watching the team, I helped plan the structure of that organization, or the structure of that conference, but really let the team that I was working with take over. And watching that conference come to life and seeing how well they had taken on the tasks gave me faith and confidence that it was time, that this team was ready to push past. And, there was some good-natured ribbing when I said I was leaving, of, you can't leave now, we've got so much momentum. And in my mind, I thought, no, what you guys don't see is that if I don't step back now, you will continue to let me do this for you when you are more than capable of doing it yourselves. And I think it's just such a gratifying and rewarding feeling to sort of let go of the handlebars or to take the training wheels off and let people fly. And really, it has been such a pleasure to watch people fly. People that you wouldn't think step up, that you wouldn't think would step up, have stepped up, and really to see the organization grow and to see other people's careers grow beyond the organization has been really rewarding. I mean, a little bit of it is faith. And a lot of it is planning and systems and coaching your teams and, giving everything that you can give. And I think something that we forget is that there's no one person that, if you build an organization correctly, there's no one person that drives everything about it. A lot of the times the organization is shaped based on the personalities that you have, but until the personalities step back, it will never become something else. And so it can be this act of real growth, of stepping away and letting someone else come in, or multiple people come in and sort of undergird what's going to happen. So, faith and training.
Thank you, Anu. And I love that you mentioned that it's important at some time to step back and let those that work with you and work for you fly, right? You are excellent at doing that. So thank you for mentioning that. I agree, it's very important. That's how you build other leaders. You give them the chance to actually lead. Now, the next question goes to Hamzi. How do you deal with failures? This is a very interesting question. So we're looking forward to your response.
How do I deal with failures? That's interesting. Wow, I didn't see this one. Okay, yeah, I didn't see this one coming. How do I deal with failure? Oh boy. I think I got this tagline from a movie: you win some and you lose some.
Mm-hmm.
You fail some. So for me, it's just knowing and understanding that you can't win everything, and you can't succeed in every endeavor. I think also is, just maybe talking to someone to get reassured. Because I think it goes a long way when you talk to someone and share the experience and then they tell you, oh, you're not a failure. It goes a long way because words are powerful. I think for me, that's the biggest part, just, sharing it with my wife or my mom, and then they say, oh no, you didn't get it because it wasn't meant for you, or it could have been, a disaster for you. So this is a way of God, they say this is a way of God helping you to, filter through what is not good for you. But generally, I think for me, failure does not get to me. Yes, when I was much younger, when I applied for fellowship and I didn't get selected, I feel bad. But maybe I share one quick example of how I dealt with a failure. So that was early in my career when I was still a climate change activist. So there's this climate tracker fellowship where they would, if they select you as a fellow, you go to the UN and document the high-level negotiations. So I applied the first time, and I got an email saying, out of the pool of X amount of people that applied from around the world, I didn't get selected. And then when that hit me, I felt really bad. And then I took my time to study the website of the organizers, so the founders of this organization. So I wrote them and asked them, so what made my application bad? Can you give me feedback? Review, just give me a review. Then 2, I said, can I be a contributor to your blog? So they have a blog section. So I said, can I be a contributor writer? Just write from Africa and share perspective remotely. And they agreed. And they replied, giving me feedback on how my application, why my application didn't get selected. So the next day I applied. I made it to the second to the last round, and then I was dropped off. Again, I felt bad. This time I think I even felt angry. I've contributed to your blog. I thought, and you publish my blog. I get a lot of feedback and readers and comments. So the third year, when they published application, I just told myself I was not going to apply. They've rejected me 2 times. It's fine. And then I got an email from the guy who coordinates the program and said, hey, Hamzi, I hope you're planning to put in your application this year. When I saw them, I was like, okay. Then I quickly applied. Guess what? I got selected the 3rd time. I went to Europe for 3 months, all paid. It was really exciting. I was in a room with heads of state and heads of government. It was really exciting. So for me, how I deal with failure is never giving up. Just keep trying and being better. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking about that example. I love that you said how you deal with failure is never giving up. Perseverance. You just kept going. And I love the 2 things you did. The first time you applied and you didn't make it to the final round, right? You didn't just take that and say, well, that's it, such is life. You asked for feedback. You said, what did I do that didn't qualify me for this, right? You asked for specific feedback. And then you also asked to provide value to them, to join their blog contributors. And I love that. And I believe that actually paid off for you, so that by the 3rd time, when you didn't want to apply, someone else from their organization said, no, you should apply. So to me, that's a beautiful story of perseverance and adding value despite feeling rejected or considering something a failure. So thank you for sharing that. Now the next question goes to Mayokun. So Mayokun, this question says, everyone may wish to be a leader, but it has become evident that not everyone has leadership qualities. Yet, due to connections, they have been placed in leadership positions. This is sounding like nepotism. Now, what advice can you give to team members who are feeling down due to lack of good leadership? It's a really good question.
Yes, that is an intense question. And I think that, so let me speak to it this way, right? We have all our people, you find yourselves in situations where you're working with a bad boss, quote and unquote, right? The person is not encouraging you, or you can actually look at the person and say, what are your qualifications for being in that job, right? And what I have found, or what I have learned to tell particularly young people, is take it as part of your career journey. This job that you're in, this person that you're in, you might not be working with that person in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, but you are with that person now. You are in that job now. Do your part, right? Do your job, do your part. Make sure you are doing what you need to do. It might not be easy, right? You might actually be, because if there are 2 sides to it. You could have this boss that's incompetent, or you could have this boss that's actually victimizing you, right? Just being abusive and things like that. So it's not all going to be honky-dory, but look at it as it's an opportunity for you to learn. You're in this job. Do your job and take it one day at a time, right? The reason why I say that is I've also seen that a lot of people would throw their hands up and say, oh, I don't like my boss, I'm going to resign, right? And you speak to them and say, do you have another job? Do you have a plan? No, they're just upset, right? And they've just taken that decision in the moment. And I have learned to tell people, don't do that, right? how you feel today might not be how you feel in 5 days. It might not be how you feel next month. Just take your time, make a plan, right? Decide on what you want to do next. Are you trying to find another job? Are you trying to go back to school? Do you want to get better qualifications? Even if you want to go into another job, what do you need to get that job, right? Focus on that and work on yourself. Take the power away from that situation and that external circumstance and make it about yourself and what you want to achieve, what you want to do. Because as you're working with that person, I mean, think about it. People have careers of they're retiring at 65, 70. So this is going to be a very small speck in your career journey. So don't let it overwhelm you in the moment. But think about, how do I get out of this? What do I want next? And then plan towards it. I mean, I liked something Anu said about, physical exercise, and that works for me, right? When I get very overwhelmed, I go for a walk, I go running. And I just find that by the time I come back, the circumstance has not changed, right? But I feel better because my head is clear. So that's just my advice to young people, to say, take the power away from that circumstance and then work on your plan for how you want to move to the next step.
Very good advice. Take the power away from that circumstance and work on your own plan to move to the next step and skills you need to get there. Very important. I hope everybody's taking notes of that. Very, very good advice. Thank you, Mayokun. Then the next question now goes to Anu. So what specific leadership skills do you seek out when you are promoting people within your team to positions of leadership?
The number one thing that I look for, and it's going back to Stephen Covey, I think it's so true. His number one habit is people who are proactive. There is a big difference between saying, hey, let's catch up. You run into a friend on the street. Hey, let's catch up sometime. And saying, oh, hey, it's great to see you. I would love to catch up. What are you doing next Tuesday at 3 p.m.? It's just such a big difference to make that shift instead of putting it on somebody else's plate or responsibility to do it versus taking responsibility for and following through on an action. I think that is the single most important factor I look for when I hire, when I promote, when I, you realize like the tribe of people that surround you becomes a reflection of who you are. I realize that most of my friends are like this as well. And then a lot of the things that we talk about, I have a very strong policy of, if you are not a kind person, you do not have a place on a team that I have responsibility for, because it's not fair to everyone else. It does not matter how good you are at your job. Part of your job is working on a team. And if you cannot do that, you have not met the basic requirements. So, supporting people means supporting the entire environment in which they work. So that is, those are probably the two biggest things. And then everything else is context dependent. I'm an engineer by training. We design products. Obviously, you need people who are good at the hard skills. But I will say a lot of those hard skills can be coached, especially in people that are proactive. Technical skill can be coached in people who are willing to go out and learn to write code, or go out and learn to do industrial design, whatever that might be. If you've got some base level, I would rather take somebody young and green and both kind and very proactive than somebody who has 50 years of experience doing something that is set in their ways and believes that their way is the only way.
Thank you, Anu. Now, you mentioned two things that I've always heard you say in all the time.
Can I add one more?
Add the third one, please.
I'm so sorry. I'm waking up. You can tell. This is cup number 2 of tea. The other thing is, and going back to the story that I told earlier, the other thing is, I love hiring people who are better than me in some dimension, because that means that I don't have to do that job. We have the first hire at Ananya Health is a very young engineer. She's straight out of school, and she has never designed a medical device. And she tells me all the time, I don't know if I'm doing it right. And I'm like, Julie, I'm here to help you, and I'm here to point you in the right direction, but you are responsible for the development, and you will be the expert. And 8 months later, lo and behold, she is the expert. And it's great because that means I don't have to do it. So I hope one day she goes on to do much bigger and greater things. You know, that's what you enable, because it makes your job easier right now.
I love that you said that. I couldn't love that anymore. And I've always known you to say those three things, which is very true for you. You care about people who are proactive, you want people to be kind, and they should be willing to step up and take on the role that they are being hired to take on. So yes, thank you for that. I fully agree. Then the next question is going to Hamzat. A lot of hardworking employees believe that they deserve a leadership role based on the time and effort they've put into their tasks. What advice would you offer them to stand out and advance in their career as a leader? Should they bring it up to their team / their superior in the workplace, or should they just wait patiently?
No one would hand you over a leadership role. That I've learned from experience. You know, and it's not a competition, by the way. You know, I believe in teamwork and team building. But then again, you don't sit down, fold your arms, and then you think, you know, because some people would naturally just recognize your efforts and promote you, while some other people, you need to be in their face or just talk to them and make them more conscious about your efforts and the time and the energy you put into the work. But I think by and large is just being able to communicate the value you bring to the team and how your value, how your inputs, you know, contribute to the overall goal and vision of the organization. So if you can effectively communicate this, of course, without, you know, making anyone feel less than themselves, fantastic. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Hamzi. I'm happy that you mentioned something. It's going to segue into our next question. You talked about nobody's just going to hand you leadership. You have to do a good job, one, and then you have to also make yourself visible to people who can actually give you leadership positions. Now, my next question here is, there are two types of currency in a workplace. There is relationship currency and there is performance currency. Now, the debate goes back and forth. Which one is more important? Which one do you really, really have to get to the next level in your career? Now, from your point of view, and this is a question for everyone, this is the last question we'll take. Which one do you think is more important, or do you think both are required? Performance currency versus relationship currency. What you do versus who you know. And Hamzi, you can start off.
Yeah, thank you. This also brings in mind the politics in the office space. You know, you have to embrace it and understand and be conscious that there is politics in the office space, you know. And again, this works in the context of your work environment. You know, if you're in the civil service, it's more about relationship. If you're in the private sector or the civic technology space, it's about performance, but also relationship plays a bigger role. But I always tell my team, you know, when you join us, the first thing I tell you is your relationship outside of code is more importantly than your life, your relationship outside of code is more important than your life and relationship inside of code, because you spend more hours outside of the work environment, even if you spend a lot of hours with your colleagues. So whatever you do outside, how you do it outside would shape who you are inside. So, but for me, you know, in my own space, performance definitely outweighs relationship, but relationship plays a significant role. And for me, I think also, and some people would relate, when you don't have personal connection with some people, there's no way you can get the vibes to work with them. It's just natural. You want to connect with some people, you know, before you work with them. You know, you want to be able to meet them at some level of relationship before you be able to trust them and give them some role and responsibility. Because again, in the journey of career, you know, there's one important aspect, you know, which is loyalty. Loyalty plays a big role. So loyalty comes with that relationship that you built over the years, you know, but of course, you know, performance, you know, goes a long way, because performance have to do with your competence to deliver on the job. So I think the two of them go hand in hand, but, you know, performance in my own space would outweigh relationship, or relationship is also key.
Thank you. Anu?
I think company culture plays a big part into this, or organization culture, and Hamzi started his answer with that. And I think it's so important to remember In some industries, obviously relationship is more important. You mentioned civil service or government. And for a startup, it's much different, right? In a startup, everyone has to do so many things that you really need people who can step up and do things. I think both of them are maybe a necessary but not sufficient condition, to use an engineering term here. It is necessary to be good at your job, but it is not sufficient often to be good at your job. So performance currency is sort of that base condition. You need it, but it's not the only thing you need. And I think if you recognize that, in different organizations, you need more or less of something. Obviously, you should focus on being good at your job, but in some organizations, you will need to focus on the relationships that you build. And maybe don't get in the habit of relying on relationships to move you forward, because that often will not endure in your career. I mean, the long tail of your career will show you that your reputation is built more than just on the few people that you know within an organization. If you have a reputation of being good at what you do, that will often endure much longer than currying favor with your immediate boss. Bosses change, companies change, leadership changes, climates change, macroeconomic conditions change, but you being good at your job often does not change. If you build that foundation of excellence now, you will not lose that. No one will ever take that away from you.
Thank you. Mayokun?
Wow, I think they've pretty much given the answers to it. But I think what I would just add is, for me, performance is, it's basic, right? You really have to perform. And the one thing about it is, if you're a performer, it tends to stand out to not just you, but to your colleagues, right? People who are even your peers, such that by the time you're getting that promotion or not getting it, they actually sympathize with you, right? If you're not getting it, they can actually push you forward themselves. And by the time you're getting it as well, they're celebrating you, because you don't want to be promoted and people are looking, because trust me, everybody knows. People know those who are currying favors and who are moving forward because of it. They might not say anything, but they're very aware of it, right? And it's very important because it goes into your reputation. So I think for me, from a relationship currency perspective, what I actually think of is not just who you know, but for me, relationship currency in making you a leader is, how do you relate with people, right? Because ultimately, if I'm putting you into a leadership position, I am ultimately responsible for how you treat your team members, right? I'm ultimately responsible for the work you get done through them. So I need to make sure that your relationship currency with people around you, people that report to you, is good. You're going to be kind to them. You're going to treat them properly, right? You don't want to put someone in a position of leadership and the person is toxic and has just destroyed the team. And you find that when people are also in that toxic relationship, the team members just sort of cower, right? Nobody says anything and the whole team is struggling. And then your productivity is affected and you are wondering why, right? So for me, from a relationship currency perspective, is looking at that person that we want to promote and actually saying, how do they relate with other people around them? What are people saying, right? Because ultimately it's going to have very big consequences for me as their team lead and also the organization as a whole.
Very true. So just to wrap up everything you've all said, I think the biggest point here is that they go hand in hand, right? You need both performance currency and relationship currency. And depending on the sector you're working in or the company you work for, you may need a bit more of relationship currency or a bit less. But no matter what, a minimum requirement is performance currency. You have to be good at what you do. So thank you so much for that. And so now we've come to the end of the panel. My heart is breaking a little bit. I wish we could go on for longer. I've really enjoyed listening to you, and I believe all our audience members have enjoyed listening and learning from you as well. And I want to thank you all. Thank you, Mayokun. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Hamzi, for your wonderful insights, your wisdom. And thank you for being exemplary leaders. Again, in a time such as this, where we're really having such issues around the world, such crisis, right? And such doubts in leadership. It's amazing to see leaders like you that are exemplary enough for us to say, let's emulate, let's learn from you, let's take your best practices and put that into our own lives and our own modes of leading. So thank you so much. I'm so glad that you joined us today. I'm very, very happy, very grateful. So, and this is your time. If you have any last words to say, please feel free to go ahead and let the audience members know. We'll start with Mayokun, if you have any last words.
I just want to say thank you again for having me on this panel. And I think for me, I've had opportunities to speak, but I've also had opportunities to learn quite a lot from the fellow panelists. So for me, I think that's my key takeaway, the fact that I've had opportunities to learn, to hear from other people, understand challenges, and taking away those lessons. For me, that's been really great. And I remember earlier you said, oh, we should type yes, if we had. And for me, it was an oh yes, right? And I just want to say this has been an amazing experience. And I think as we sort of move forward through the rest of 2020, we knock on wood that things only get better in the second half of the year as we all sort of get used to this new and interesting times. And for me, what I would tell everyone is, wake up every day, take one step at a time, and you'll get there. I think just don't put too much pressure on yourself. We'll get there. Let's all get there. That's the goal.
We'll get there. Thank you, Mayokun. Thank you so much. Hamzi, any last words?
Adaize, first, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I've also learned a lot and happy to share. I would just say 3 things that helped me get out of depression. So anyone who's feeling down, first, just keep breathing, because depression comes with suicidal thoughts. So just keep breathing first. Second, just keep smiling. No matter how bad it is, just smile, because if you smile, you're actually, inspiring someone else, or someone who's feeling down. When they see your smiley face, they just believe that, someone who has a smiley face inspired them. And lastly, just keep going. No matter what, just keep going, keep moving.
Thank you so much, Hamza. Keep breathing, keep smiling, keep moving. We have heard. Thank you. Anu, final words, please.
Thank you for having me, for the great questions. And I have been +1ing and fangirling everything that Hamzi and Mayokun have been saying. So it's been a really great experience. I mean, it's always great to sharpen the saw and refine how you think. So I appreciate everyone that showed up and all of the great answers and questions. And I mean, there's nothing more to say. I think Hamzi summed it up really nicely. Keep moving. And you don't have to know exactly, what's happening 3 years down the line. We don't even know what next month will look like. But there's a great saying that the road in front of you, you may only be able to see half a mile in front of you because of the fog, but you can make the whole journey that way. So keep going, you're already on the journey, so keep the momentum moving forward. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Anu. And thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Thank you for joining, for asking great questions. So just before we go, 3 small things, 3. The first thing, if you would like to share anything you've learned here today, anything valuable, right? If anything touched you and really stayed with you, share it online, share it with your friends, and then just make sure to tag us. So tag at DYGL Africa if you're sharing it online, so that others too can join in on the conversation and learn just like you've learned today. And that's across all social media platforms that we're on, from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter to LinkedIn. And then also, if you'd like to get a copy of this recording of this webinar, which I think you really should take it and keep it and save it forever, please also fill out the form that's in the comment section. So there'll be a link that will be dropped there in just a few seconds. Just make sure to click the link and go out and fill the really quick form, and you'll get the webinar recording and also get access to the details for each of these panelists that we had today. You'll have their social media handles there and ways that you can get out and reach them. Then the third thing as well is, please follow our pages online, right? So if you consider this to be a valuable investment of your time, follow our pages on social media across, like I've mentioned earlier, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We are DYGL Africa across all the platforms. And for anybody who's wondering, what does DYGL mean? It means deserve, well, actually it means design your great life. And now design your great life is chosen intentionally, right? The idea is that in this life, there's nothing you will achieve if you don't design it yourself. So if you don't take the time to say, I'm going to craft what my life will look like, what success means for me, and I'm going to make sure I achieve it on my own terms, then you won't actually get it. And what you'll do is you'll just end up fitting into somebody else's plan in life that you just so happen to be around for. So again, design your great life. Keep that in mind and keep following us if you like the content and you appreciate what you've learned today. We have much more coming for you. And so finally, again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Hamzi. Thank you, Mayokun. Thank you, Anu. Thank you all the participants. It's been wonderful having you. It's been wonderful moderating for you. I've had a great time and I hope you all had a wonderful time too. I wish you a great evening. And before we go, if everybody can just unmute their lines and join me to give a huge round of applause to our panelists. I mean, they've been wonderful. So just unmute your lines and we'll just all, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. And Anu, have a good afternoon in the US. Bye. Bye, everyone.